Welcome to this meeting of the Licence Committee being held on the 22nd of June 2022. This meeting is being webcast with the exception of any business that the Cabinet resolves to exclude the press and public because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the Local Government Act 1972. The first item on the agenda is apologies. Are there any apologies? No other apologies. Item 2 on the agenda is the appointment of a chair, this being the first meeting of the committee in this municipal year. Are there any nominations for the position of chair? Councillor Tomlin.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bobby Feely for the position of chair of the Licensing Committee. Her record of devotion to this council and her wealth of experience in all manner of the workings of this local authority, not least the Licensing Committee, go before her. She's a lady who works very hard in ensuring the fair and right outcomes, which is invaluable in this role. Thank you.
Seconder. Do you have any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, then Councillor Feely is elected as chair.
Thank you very much.
To the first licensing committee for me this year. So shall we take apologies, please?
Just Councillor Windmill.
Yeah. Any declarations of interest?
Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it's a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the chamber for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from committee staff here today.
Joan, you've got your hand.
Interest only in agenda item 10. If I need to on any other, I will flag that up. The only reason that I have a personal interest at this moment in time is that I do use the taxis in Frill and of course do know most of the taxi drivers within Frill. That's my personal interest. Thank you.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I've been remiss and forgotten to move to appointment of vice chair. Completely slipped my mind. I'm so sorry. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Andrew?
I'm happy to nominate Councillor Hugh Irving for vice chair. His history in this role goes before him. Thank you.
I'm happy to second Councillor Irving.
Any other nominations? No, that being the case, Councillor Irving, you'll be the vice chair. Sorry, I missed it out.
Thank you. Can I just say before you proceed to the minutes, it was a privilege and a pleasure to act as the chairman of this committee for the previous 5 years. I had the most wonderful support from everybody concerned, and I see one of my former vice chairs, Alan James. They steered me through well, and I'm sure they will steer you through well if you listen to what they say. Thank you very much. I will give you the best support I can, but I won't interfere.
Thank you. Any urgent matters? Are there any urgent matters? No urgent matters. So we'll move to the minutes of the last meeting. So if we can just go for accuracy, page 9, page 10, page 11, 12, 13, and 14. And for matters arising, page 9 again, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So do they need to be
Just need a proposal as a form.
right? Yeah. So can I have someone who was on that meeting as to propose as a correct record? Thank you. Seconder? Anybody else?
Yeah,
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.
technically, you don't have to be present to propose and second the minutes.
Okay. So if we move on to the next item, which is item 7. And this is to review the current tariff charges for Hackney carriage vehicles. Who's Ian?
Okay, bore da pawb. Good morning, everyone. And, welcome on this fine sunny day. Okay, the purpose of this report is to review the current tariff charges for Hackney carriage vehicles, commonly known as taxis. And this is following a request of a number of licensed drivers to review. We've drafted the proposals within this report. You can make the decision under the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, and section 65 of the said act allows the council to fix the rates of fares within the county in connection with the hire of a vehicle. Members considered the report at their last licensing committee meeting and resolved that officers should consult on the proposals agreed and report back to the licensing committee if objections were raised. Following lead member delegated decision, officers published the statutory notice in the local press, and that's in the packet Appendix A. As a result of that notice, 14 objections were submitted within the requisite 14-day period, and a redacted summary of those objections are available at Appendix B. Officers advised all licensed drivers that the proposed tariff charge would not take place until objections are considered by members. As a consequence, a number of representations were received in support of the proposed changes to the tariff, and these are attached in Appendix C. Additionally, 2 petitions were received signed by 38 licensed drivers. The proposed tariff is attached at Appendix D with the changes proposed highlighted. So the table of fares was last amended in 2018, and the charges for distance are used to compare a league table of taxi fares throughout the UK produced by Private Hire and Taxi Monthly. Based on the current charges, £5.60 for a 2-mile journey, Denbighshire are listed at 268 out of a total of 359 UK-wide local authorities. And that is 13th out of 22 in Wales and 5th out of 6 in North Wales. And that was dated in May 22, so there may well be changes slightly to those. Members may wish to note that this proposal will take Denbighshire to 7th highest in Wales, and along with Gwynedd, 2nd highest in North Wales, with the same journey costing £6. Conway, having recently amended their charges, have the highest charge in the region at £6.60. And to point to note, their comparisons are based on the 2-mile journey on the normal tariff, tariff 1, as we know it, and does not take into account any extras or additions. and position 1 is the dearest. These proposals amount to a 7% increase in charges for a 2-mile journey, although this percentage increases with distance. Members will wish to consider the opinions of both objectors and supporters in determining whether any change to the tariff is needed, and in particular may consider aspects such as the timing of tariff 2, the days where tariff 2 are implemented, and the rate per mile, the appropriate measurement for a subsequent distance of mile, or is half mile better suited. After consideration of the objections, the council is obliged to set a date where the tariff will be implemented with or without any modifications, and this date must be within 2 months of the date specified referred to in paragraph 4.3. For clarity, the public notice implementation date was the 11th of May, and therefore the implementation date must be before the 10th of July at the latest. Members should note that although the council set the table of fares, a Hackney carriage proprietor can charge a customer a lesser fee. The set charge is the maximum permitted. So members, the recommendation is that members consider all the representations received, both for and against the proposals, and then they may resolve to either approve the proposed tariff as detailed in Appendix D with an implementation date of the 1st of July, or amend the proposed tariff with an implementation of the 1st of July, or reject the proposals. With the chair's indulgence, I'm proposing that I read through Appendix, the objections and the support. Yeah, if I can try and summarise as I go along with it, so bear with me. So of the 14 objections, we've listed them down in Appendix B in summary form. So if I read through those to help, okay. So the first is, as a taxi driver stated, I think the times are changing to tariff 2 are unacceptable. The people I have had in my taxi recently have said they will stop using taxis on a Sunday. I also think the starting tariff 2 at 6 p.m. on a Friday and Saturday is unacceptable. Maybe 9 or 10 o'clock would suffice. I personally think a Sunday tariff should be tariff 1 until at least 6 p.m. Only my opinion and customers I've had in cars. I agree with most of the increase, but tariff 2 on a Friday and Saturday should remain at midnight, as this will just cause problems to both drivers and public, in my opinion. I don't work weekend nights, but using tariff 2 from 6 p.m. will just kill the trade. Also, no way will I be charging tariff 2 on a Sunday. A price increase is needed, but let's face it, we don't live in a big wealthy city, so any price increase should be realistic. Personally, I think either an increase of the start price or the mileage, but not necessarily both. As a licensed Hackney driver in Denbighshire, I feel some parts of the proposed increase are impractical. Whilst I have no objection to the increase as such, I think the proposal for tariff 2 to start 6 p.m. Friday and Saturday is unfair to many who will still need transport to and from work, etc. It would be preferred for this to be brought forward to 11 p.m. rather than midnight. With regard to Sunday all day tariff 2, this is just not practical, as many of us feel it's a step too far and work will be lost as a result. I would like to object against the tariff increase. Tariff 2, 6 p.m. Friday night and 6 p.m. Saturday night and all day Sunday, I feel it would price taxis out of the market, as people will not use taxis as much as proven by the recent Easter weekend. And 2, upping the start price will also, I feel, put customers off taking taxis, as proven of the amount of Conway residents from Kimnell Bay, Tywin and Abergele using Denbighshire taxis since Conway put their prices up. So I feel it's better for some work than nothing. I protest against the proposed fare price increase, as I think it's not the right time in the current times. I would like to give my opinion on the proposed fare increase. We are overdue for an increase. £3.50 for the first mile is a decrease on a measured mile, and at the present rate it amounts to £4 per mile, taking into effect traffic conditions. I propose leave it as it is, just an increase of 50p on the start tariff 1 and 2, or £4 start on tariff 1 for the first mile and £5 start on tariff 2. Hope that makes sense. The proposed increase in tariffs would be a disaster for the local taxi industry. We have just had the pandemic, which saw customers plummet. It also saw the numbers of drivers willing to work plummet. Many drivers won't work at night, which means the general public find it difficult to get a taxi in the evenings in Rhyl and Prestatyn. There is also a decline in numbers during the day. The cost of living is rising dramatically for households in all areas. The last thing the general public needs is a taxi rate rise. We are trying to encourage passengers back into taxis, not chase them away with something that they cannot afford. We already have complaints on how much the fares cost. Tariff 2 all day Sunday, nurses to get to the hospital on a Sunday with limited buses, shop staff trying to get to work in Rhyl and Prestatyn on a Sunday, holiday makers wanting to go places in our area. The above all get paid at normal rate for working these days. Why should we be any different? Why should we be different? Friday and Saturday nights in Rhyl, how many people walk home because they can't get a taxi from the pub, nightclub? The numbers are more than you'd think. We need to try and encourage these people back into taxis, not chase them away with higher fares. Holiday makers, do we not want to encourage them to come and spend money in our seaside town, to travel by taxi to their destinations from the railway station? The rate rise at the present time would actually make passenger numbers go down. All we would do is maybe still take the same amount of money with less passengers. Yes, less fuel and wear and tear. The other side, passenger numbers will fall off a cliff. You want people to use their cars less and use public transport and taxi to stop the congestion and parking issues in the town. With a rate rise, that will encourage more people to drive. I want my objection to remain in place. Something I didn't put in the objection is that we'll be back to the price wars. This doesn't be if it's anybody, and especially the drivers, as they lose out on what they should be earning. State of vehicles suffer, and with the new rules will further damage the industry. Taxi charges. Just a point to note on this one that I'm about to read out is from a member of the public and not a current driver. It's the only objection we've had from a member of the public. Okay. It seems that a rather standard formulation is being proposed where little consideration to the reasons for travel or the nature of the travellers has been given. With generally poor and deteriorating standards of public services, the consequence will be that taxi services will continue to be seen as a last unavoidable option for vital journeys by many people, regardless of their circumstances or ability to pay. It will mean inevitably that some important travel is avoided. I'm thinking here the journeys for medical treatments or appointments, possibly repetitive or family emergencies, particularly where people are less able on public benefits or straitened circumstance or have no other public service option at all. It is recognised that a tariff arrangement is needed in a market where different providers must compete for business and where the costs will vary accordingly to particular days and times, journeys and loads. But the proposed tariff seems simplistically crude and not to have considered the imperatives for travel for potential passengers. Is there some means for a more imaginative approach to be considered? It could have been marked beneficial impact on many who currently find themselves excluded. Okay. As a taxi driver myself for 22 years, reading your new tariff prices that you've proposed, I think they're way above inflation and will do damage to the trade. They will stop people from going out for meals and drinks in the evening, also push older people who struggle to make ends meet. Putting tariff 2 start at 6 p.m. Friday and Saturday and Sunday all day is outrageous. I have customers from Abergele who go on a Friday to the plough at 7 p.m. and back at 10 p.m. Cost at the moment is £25 for the whole job, and new cost will be £50. And that will be the last I see of them. St Asaph to Chester will also increase from 60 to one way to 130 one way. Outrageous. I also have an old lady who goes from St Asaph to Rhyl Bingo on a Friday at 6:30 and returns at 10 p.m. Price at the moment is £24. New price will be £44. I'm not saying there shouldn't be an increase because our costs have gone up. A start price of an extra £1 would be good, but no change to the running price. Example, most drivers do about 20 jobs a day, so an extra £20 a day, £100 a week, £400 a month, which in my eyes is a good rise. The few people who have wanted the rise do not work on the streets and do account work. So the big companies are paying the bills, not Joe Public. I do hope you can change the new tariff, as the trade can't do with any more loss of customers. I'm writing to you to state my concern regarding the proposal to substantially rise the table of fares as 11th of May. I personally feel the increase to the table is ridiculously excessive. I've worked as a self-employed driver for 7 years. I pride myself of giving great service to the people, and I work long hours to keep my customers happy. I'm based in St Asaph, which means I'm central to Denbighshire and cover quite a large area of the county when requested. The cost of a typical daily fare from St Asaph to Real Town Centre during the daytime for the elderly, business people or disadvantaged customers at the current tariff 1 rate is approximately £12. If the new proposed tariff prices were implemented, the fare would rise significantly to £15. At tariff 2 rate, this would be £22 to drive our customers 6 miles. Personally feel this price would deter our customers from using our service. I also feel the proposed change of tariff times, Friday 6 p.m. all day, all weekend, day and night, is unnecessary. As an example to you, if a customer wanted a taxi at 6 p.m. on a Friday night to take them to a restaurant in Ruthin from St Asaph, 13 miles, one-way journey would cost them £50.25. That's over £100 return trip. Would you be happy to pay these prices? I know I wouldn't. This would have a knock-on effect. People won't be able to afford to use taxis, which means they will drive or even possibly drink drive. We all know that goes on, but we don't want more drink drivers on the road. I absolutely understand why you've looked to rise the table of fares, as we haven't had an increase since 2018, and also the huge rise of cost of living. But there really is no need to make such a substantial charge to meter rates. I don't know if you're aware, but there are many Denbighshire Hackney drivers who have serious concerns about this. We are the ones that are on the front line dealing with passengers daily on the ranks, etc. Please seriously consider the livelihoods of taxi drivers before you impose this increase. Please consult with the drivers, ask them what their thoughts and regarding an increase, rather than just taking on the views of a company who only use the meter for business work from the business park in St Asaph to the airport. This company don't do any rank work for Joe Public. I would like to lodge my objections to the proposed rise in taxi fares. With the cost of living on the rise, this is not the correct time for a rise, as it will make having a taxi a luxury and cause more damage to the trade. At the moment, I'm getting 5 to 1 out of my diesel insignia, down from 7 to 1, but I am still making a profit. We are already fighting against community transport, the new text to bus, which the council are promoting, and home delivery from supermarkets, and an increase which turn people towards this services. The types of rise that have been proposed seem to be geared around people going out at night and no thought about people who need taxis to get to work or appointments in the day or evening. The part of the rise which brings tariff 2 in at 6 p.m. on a Friday and Saturday would be worse thing than it would happen to the taxi trade since deregulation, and would cause unreversible damage. We have to remember that we are not working in a city with a large nighttime economy. I understand some people who can't get normal finance are paying a company in Liverpool around £200 a week for a vehicle, but we should not ruin the whole taxi trade for a few that are paying these high rates for vehicles. Once again, I don't think this is the correct time for any sort of rise, but if we have to look at some sort of rise, I would say £3.50 start and £5 start after midnight bank holidays is the only part of the proposal which should be brought in. The charging of tariff 2 on a Sunday will kill the Sunday local trade, the same as it done charging it on a bank holiday. I do agree drivers should get an extra for working Sundays and bank holidays, but why not put a surcharge of 50p on each job which goes to a driver, as it costs no extra for the owner to have a car out working as any other day. I've driven taxis in rail for over 35 years, and if the rises are brought in, I really fear for the future of the trade. And the final comment is not happy with night rate and all Sunday. Okay, those were the objections. Just let me have a mention of my thirst for now. And I'll just go through Appendix C, which was the support for the proposals. So following the opposition to the tariff adjustments and the subsequent scheduled meeting, I feel it's important to note the following. Fuel prices, since requesting the tariff adjustment in November 21, diesel has risen from £1.49 to £1.79 per litre, an average UK price and above the charts is in that graph there. It's viewable in Appendix C. The trend does not appear to be slowing, with many predictions of £2 a litre being reported. Electric prices, with huge increases in electricity costs, drivers who have already made the change to greener vehicles are feeling even more of a pinch. Bigger increases are predicted before the end of the year too. It has been reported this week that public charging points, the most expensive way to charge, have increased costs of over 21% in the last 8 months. Vehicle purchase and maintenance. With the removal of several government grants, new vehicles are coming at a higher cost to drivers. With the new MG5 EV at over 30k compared to just 24k 6 months ago. New diesel vehicles can have a vehicle excise duty, VED, in excess of £2,000. I'm presuming this is private hire electric vehicle minibuses are circa £500 a year to get road tax due to the high initial purchase price. Wheelchair accessible vehicles are nearly 50k for a Nissan Dynamo as per trial vehicles with Denbighshire, and 70k for or more for an LEVC. Not able to do. Okay, don't know what an LEVC is. Garage wages for employees has increased with national minimum wage and national insurance increase. As such, maintenance hourly rate has increased. Those with newer vehicles using main dealer repairs and diagnostics are hit at a higher level with these costs. Tyres, brakes, fluids have risen by as much as 40%. Drivers cannot afford to buy new and green, and so the local fleet will only get older and worse for the environment. Driver unavailability. There is a national shortage of drivers reported frequently across the national press. As a low-paid income, it is impossible to get new drivers to start. Drivers do not want to be paid low amounts to ferry drunk passengers locally. Drivers do not want to work Sundays for low money. Most supermarkets have enhancements for Sunday working. Drivers do not want to work late into the night or early morning for little reward. Private hire and taxi monthly 2-mile ranking. Denbighshire now ranked at 268, a drop of 4 places since this process started. We are still the second lowest fare in the region. The national average 2-mile fare is £6.24 and we are currently £5.60. Anecdotal objections with no evidence base. People saying it'll kill the trade have no evidence to support this. Answer: Conwy has increased the prices and has seen no dramatic decrease in taxi usage, at least none in the press. It'll cost £30 to £40 from the Plough to Abergele at 7 p.m. Answer: no, it won't. There are enough drivers. Answer: anyone who has tried to book a taxi in a weekend will understand this isn't the case. People can just work an hour longer to make up the difference. This isn't the answer to an already overworked service. Tired drivers aren't something we need. It is understood there are objections to this application from several operators, but please remember you are setting a maximum allowable amount. These operators who wish to charge less can. It is understood too that some operators who have objected to the increase were also the same operators who asked for an extension to the vehicle age policy. This shows that these same operators cannot or don't want to afford new environmentally friendly vehicles. Keeping older vehicles in circulation is detrimental to the health of all public using the vehicles, but especially to the children being picked up in the said vehicles on school runs and other children at school at the schools where these vehicles drop off or pick up. A fair price so people can invest in greener technology should surely be the forefront of the council decision making. Additionally, national taxi rates are increasing. For example, Vale of Glamorgan 16% increase. John Lewis, branch secretary of Vale Taxis Unite, said fuel prices and other costs have recently gone through the roof and we are also struggling to get new drivers into the sector. I believe that an increase would help keep existing drivers afloat and possibly encourage new blood. Same reasons we have supplied. Lancaster, 14%, along with a commitment to annual review of the tariff by way of application of the retail price index. Some areas of the country are looking at the second increase this year. There has been no evidence to prove that a rate increase would be detrimental to the trade in any press nationally. If local authorities, the travelling public and those working in the taxi sector want a modern fleet with fairly paid drivers, and the answer is quite simply yes, a rate increase is required. This is not a pay rise, this is an adjustment with the cost of living. In 2018, national minimum wage was £7.83 an hour. It is now £9.50 an hour. This, along with increases in national insurance contributions, is a huge uplift to employers. The Welsh Government will soon bring a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit roads. This will increase journey times by 30%. This will in turn reduce the number of miles a driver can complete per hour of working. As such, drivers will see a real-term decrease in money. Inflation alone should dictate the increase, but throw in the need to invest in greener vehicles and the need to cover lost revenue caused by the pandemic, the fare prices can realistically only go one way. We also fear that this rate increase is not approved now, then the next rate increase will be much higher than the currently requested. Living costs have greatly increased since the original request was made 7 months ago. One last point, following the email from Sarah Palmer to operators this week about the state of some vehicles being used as school contracts, you have to wonder if this lack of maintenance is due to some people being unable to afford basic repairs. Whilst it is unacceptable for any vehicle to fall below the standards required, and even worse to be found dangerous, it is indicative of drivers, operators not being able to carry out the required repairs due to increased costs. I hope that the adjustment to tariff will pass. It is not a pay rise, as some people put it, but merely a break-even point, the current cost of living crisis. Further, sorry, that was a repeat page, that last one. We then have a table of charges of the price changes between 2018 to 22 for you perusal, including road tax, maintenance, service, all sorts of things there to look at. And move on to page 35, a further support letter. Following the newsletter that proposed taxi meter tariff change will be reconsidered due to some objections received. We support the idea of the proposed meter price increase by Denbighshire. The reasons of the support are the following. The last change in the taxi meter prices was a while ago, 2018, to update the rate, which was in place for about 10 years. Since the cost of our overheads have risen, especially the past 2 years, due to some huge events in the world, such as COVID and the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, causing supply shortages. At the last change, the tariff rates, the fuel price was approximately 110 to 135. The current average is about 185, 33 to 68% increase per litre, and it has a high possibility to soar even more due to the lack of oil supply. Also, due to supply shortages, there are now a lot less new cars were manufactured. So both the new and second-hand cars are significantly more than they were cost pre-COVID. Also, the lower profit ratio we experience now does affect the company's fleet quality and age. This delays the transition to more eco-friendly vehicles, as they cost even more than the vehicles with the combustion engines. For example, a new price of a Skoda Octavia, approximately £30,000, while a Hyundai Ioniq 5 is £48,000. For companies who have employees, they have had to raise their salaries as the national minimum wage has gone up. 2018 it was £7.83, 2022 is £9.50 an hour, approximately a 21% increase. Also, there are a lot more job opportunities with more competitive wages elsewhere, as there is a general shortage on labour in the whole country, which they have to compete with. If they don't want to lose their staff numbers, The taxi fares also has to cover the salaries of all background staff who work in the offices and answering the phones, as most drivers pay for radio services, or if it is the driver itself. It has to cover for the work hours as well as which spent on the above activities. As an example, there are 4 drivers at our company. It takes an average 8 hours for one person to deal with bookings and other paperwork. At least 6 days a week, that's 48 hours of work, which has to be covered from the money the drivers earn. Cost of car parts, tyres, office equipment, mobile phones and labour costs, such as mechanics, has risen approximately 20 to 40% due to supplier shortages again and increased shipping prices. On the nation rate table of fares, Denbighshire have fallen 4 places, so currently 268, while Gwynedd is 196, Conwy 192, and Chester is 79. We would like to point out that this balance of rates would not be a pay rise. This increase would just move our profit ratio back to the pre-COVID levels, balancing the current inflation that we're all experiencing. We understand that not every driver supports the idea of proposed tariff rates, but we would like to point out that this is the maximum fare that drivers can charge. If any of them decides to charge the full fare, they're entitled to give discounts to their customers. With our regular customers, we do it to a degree. Even though we all trade in the same county, the business structures can vary between different companies, which means that the current events affect these companies and drivers differently, some more, some less. Our industry was one of the worst affected trades in COVID times. Many drivers forced to stop trading left the industry to balance the fares and have the same profit ratio as before. This would help the trade recover faster. A new 8-seater minibus or any of the diesel cars, the road tax has more than doubled now because of their cost is above a certain price limit when they were brand new. As an example, how much more a taxi would cost now. We bought a Skoda Octavia diesel in 2018, costing 16,600. It was 1 year old and 10,000 miles on the clock. If you want to buy the same now, it is in the range of 26 to 27,000 pound. We bought an 8-seater Mercedes Vito in 2019 for 24,000. It was 1 year old and 17,000 miles on the clock. We bought another one, almost the same. It's 1 year old, but it only had 1,000 miles on the clock. That vehicle cost us £11,000 more. Also, there was no choice of what price or what specs we want. The company we asked contacted us when they had one in, and if we wanted a new minibus, we had to take what they had offered, regardless of what colour or engine size or anything the vehicle had. Next thing, almost double in price, is AdBlue. We don't use an awful lot of it, but still something what older cars did not have. This is an extra cost with the new cars. I've provided on a separate sheet a calculation running costs for one of my vehicles, shows the price differences between 2018. It was calculated if the car would run 50,000 miles per year. I believe that is somewhat an average for taxis. The difference is £7,223.37, give or take £500. So this is the cost of how much more we will have to pay to run one car. This is a middle range car, not a minibus, an executive vehicle, which is a lot higher purchase cost. I would like to point out that one car, one driver ratio only applicable for sole traders. In our company, we have 6 vehicles, 2 multi-purpose and 4 cars, and for 4 drivers, which again, an extra 50% cost per driver. We must have more, as if it were to break down, we need another driver, another to cover our school and other contracts. Hope you find my points above reasonable. Hopefully these make you understand the problems we face right now. And there's a few sheets that follow that article for the petition from there. Okay. So those were the support and objections. I understand there was another email, a message that was sent through in further support or further to clarify the objections, which you may want to take into account yourselves. Do you need me to read through that one? No? Okay with that? Yeah, fine. It clarified a few points, isn't it? I think, yeah. The last bit is the Appendix D, which was the tariff. So I don't know whether anybody just needs me to clarify anything on that while here. I think one thing that I wanted you to just pick on there that possibly wasn't clear was that the start rate would be for a mile and not as it currently is for 75% of a mile, I think it is. So the proposal was to have a flat mile start rate rather than a part mile start rate. Thank you, Chair.
Right, members. Well, you've heard the objections and the people in favour. Has anybody got any points they would like to make, Martin?
Yes. Yeah, I had a look through all the objections and letters of support, and I looked through the numbers as well. I think the proposal, when you look at it, is actually quite a bit higher than inflation. And when I look at a bit more detail into the different journeys, it's potentially as well. Essentially, the fare per mile is going up 25%, and the start fare is going up 17%, but obviously includes a mile instead of 0.7 of a mile. But when I don't feel we've got quite enough information here to sort of understand the full effects of putting the rates up like this. Okay, we understand what it would do to our rankings in the trade magazine, but in terms of the effects on customers, I think it is quite a high rise. However, I think if you ask anyone what's the price of petrol at the moment, do you think taxi drivers should put their rates up? I don't think anyone would disagree with that. It's they're obviously facing increased costs. So I did look at the numbers and come up with a compromise that is more in line with inflation. And I think it takes into account the objections and the support, really, and it comes up with a reasonable compromise, which I'd like to propose, if that's all right.
Yes, it may well be that it would inform the debate if you were to set out what that was, and then members can consider that. And then if you want to, following a debate, formally propose it, and if there's a seconder, then that would be an amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think in the report recommendations, it did say the options we have now are either to approve the proposal or make an amendment or propose an amendment. Yes.
So do you want to give your compromise now, or do you want to hear other members of the committee speak first?
I don't mind. Which would you prefer?
Joan, you had your hand up.
But I think we should hear the amendment
Okay.
first, Chair.
Good. Okay.
That will probably colour all the rest of the debate. I do have
Right.
a comment to make, but I'm waiting now
All
for
right.
the amendment.
Okay. Martin, you
Thank
give your compromise then.
Okay, so what I tried to do was come up with new fare rates that would aim for a roughly sort of 10% increase. And that would be, so the new tariff for start fare would be £4. And this is kind of thinking about, I think one of the comments was, you know, getting an extra £1, a pound a journey would equate to, I don't know, 20 quid a day, would equate to £80 a week, which is would help in terms of attracting people to the job, etc., etc. So a start fare on tariff 1 would be £4, and the fare per mile would go from £2 to £2.20. So that's a 10% increase. And the start fare, well, that's tricky because it would still go from including the first 0.7 of a mile to including the first whole mile. So just to clarify, £4 start fare, £2.20 fare per mile. And then for the tariff 2, start fare of £5.50, going up from £4.50, and the fare per mile going up 10% again to £3.30. And what this does on a 1 mile journey, it puts the prices up by 11% on tariff 1, but only 2% on tariff 2. And then for tariff 1, it's essentially a 10% increase thereabouts, slightly more. And for a tariff 2, it would be an increase of lots of, you know, between 2% for low mileage, but up to 10% when you get up to 15 miles. I would propose the fare being charged in 10th mile increments. It's currently in 20th of mile increments, the fare goes up. I think to put it up in 1 mile increments, I think you potentially get the situation there where, say someone goes from, I don't know, a 6 mile journey, they want to go to a restaurant for an evening meal and get a taxi home just after 11 o'clock. If they could then go from a tariff 1 fare on, I don't know, 6 miles, it's a 6.1 mile journey. So they're essentially going to go then to a tariff 2 7 mile journey, which it does make, you know, that particular experience, it doubles the cost of a taxi. I'm not saying that's what they would be charged. You know, taking on board that taxi drivers don't have to charge, this is the full amount. But I think potentially, if you do go for that full tariff, you run the risk of these headlines where someone says, you know, I used to pay 13 quid for my taxi home from a meal out, and now that's gone up, it's doubled in price, which just proves all the objections wrong, really, if you hit a tariff like that. I think this is a fairer tariff. I would certainly want to review it earlier. I don't think we should be leaving it so long between reviews. I would say an annual review is more important. And I think it would also be good to understand what are the average taxi journeys in Denbighshire. You know, it's not a city. It's are the average taxi journeys 6 to 10 miles, or are they 1 to 2? In rail, it's going to be low if you go in St Asaph to Abergele or wherever it's a different journey. So it'd be good to understand that for future, to understand what effects these has. I'd like to say, I think it's encouraging that you've got taxi drivers objecting because they're concerned of the effect on the elderly who only might not have other options for transport to get to hospital and things like that. But I think that it's also encouraging that, you know, they don't have to charge this full amount. But I think if you put the rates up, generally over time, everyone will be charging these. So I think, oh yeah, and tariff times, I think it's risky to change those as well at the moment, but definitely review these. Can we have different times? Changing the tariff times now and putting the rates up certainly does risk, I think, someone finding that their rate has gone up and they've gone onto a new tariff. I would say don't change the tariff times just yet, but let's have a review sooner rather than later.
Okay. So have you discussed this prior to the meeting, or is this, you've just brought it to
Just
the
work this
meeting
out from the
today?
numbers. I've looked at the objections. I spoke to Ian to clarify a few
Right.
points and learn a bit about taxis. I'm sure there's loads more people can teach me about taxis. And I've done a spreadsheet and calculated what these increases entail. Okay,
Right.
so that's where that's my approach, and
Okay.
I can certainly make that public. You know, the way I've tried
Worked
to
it out.
calculate
Yeah,
these.
okay. So Ian, have you had a chance to sort of digest what Martin has said?
I think from looking at the objections, clearly there's a lot of concern for the tariff 2 charges. You know, I think a lot of virtually all the objections, you know, included that in their comments. So I think that does potentially need to be looked at. I think also as well the apportioning of the distance, the subsequent mile, does need to be looked at rather than per mile, because I think that gives customers more, you know, they pay for what they get, also rather than if you're doing 0.1 of a mile, you're paying for the full mile, which might be something that was likely to potentially cause more friction out in the field than it is or what it's worth. Without you know, putting down all the fees and all the things that Martin's worked out, then you know, it would be impossible to say. But I think certainly
Compromise, as he put it.
I think the practicalities of it, I think you know, are about there, because I think, you know, I think inflation today is 9.1%, isn't it? So I think if it's around about 10%, then that might be something to look at. But I think what we'll probably expect is that the longer the journey, the higher the increase. There would be, the percentage increase would go up as the journey goes up. So if you're doing a 30-mile journey, it might be significantly higher than the.
What I'm really trying to get at is this proposal possible to sort of slightly alter what we've come up with to adjust?
Absolutely. The position we're in at the moment now is that the proposal's there. You as a committee have the option to consider the objections and amend anything that you see fit to amend before implement, or goes back to reject it.
Joan, let's come back to you.
What the officer has to contribute to this, I think that it would be eminently sensible of us to amend this, and I would second the amendment, Chair. My other comment that I would make, which did concern me a little bit, was that sorry, Chair, I would second this amendment with an early review of the consequences of it, if you like, because it will be certainly going out to consultation again, because people will be interested in what we have moved this morning, and there will be an interest. I was just concerned that we only had one member of the public that actually sent a letter of support or not to the after the long consultation that we'd had. And I'm not sure why there was such a small amount of people responding. It did surprise me. Was it vigorous enough? And I know we were going out to the industry, obviously, because that was there, but the general public rely on this industry to get them around, as it has been proven by the stuff that came back to us from the taxi drivers. So I'm really concerned, because it's the general public that are being trundled around and they have to meet the costs. And I do realise that this particular time, with, as it was said, that the cost of petrol and so on and diesel is high on everyone's agenda at this moment in time. So people would support this, obviously, increased Chair. But in the future, when things get back to a little bit more normal than they are now, I think it would be eminently sensible for us to review at the very earliest points, and that could be perhaps 6 monthly, if that is at this particular time.
So that would be 6 months from then.
Yeah, at this particular time, it might well all even out, the petrol charging and diesels and so on in the future. I do think that at this moment in time, we should keep a really keen eye on what is going on, particularly within the industry and the service users.
Okay, Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm more than happy to support this amendment. One of the things that does concern me, that we've got till the 1st of July. We are in June now, aren't we? So I wondered whether there was a wrong date on here, because it's a short turnaround, quite honestly. And do we not need to consult again now on this change, which I would recommend that we should.
Gary's got a view on that.
Okay,
I know we would.
Well, I'm contractually obliged not to have a view, but I can tell you what the law says. Section 65 of the 1976 Act says that the council has the authority to change the fares or to review the fares, and it sets out a process. So I'm just explaining the date, really, and the process says that we have to publish a proposal, which was done, and that has to set out an implementation date. And I think the implementation date that was set out in the notice was the 11th of May. And what the law says is that if there are no objections, or if there are objections and they are withdrawn before the end of the, I think it's 14-day period, then those charges come into effect on the date in the notice, which would have been the 11th of May. If you receive objections, and those objections are not withdrawn, then the proposal has to come back to committee for committee to consider whether or not to press on with the proposals or to amend them in any way, and to then set a new implementation date. But that implementation date, according to the Act, has to be within 2 months of the original implementation date. Hence, in the report, it says that you'd have to do it by the 10th of July at the latest. In terms of further consultation, the Act doesn't require you to go out to consult further, because what it says is you've already done the consultation. What you're doing today is you're considering the consultation and determining whether or not to amend in light of the observations that have been made. So the duty that you have is to take into account all the representations that have been made, both for and against, and then to decide whether you go with the original proposal as advertised or whether to amend it in light of the observations, representations that you've received. So it's a very long-winded way of saying that you don't need to go out for further consultation, and to explain why the date is the 1st of July, presumably consideration being given that it's easier to do it from the beginning of a month than the middle, but the absolute backstop date in the Act would be the 10th of July. If you were going to propose, if you wanted to go out to consult further, then there's nothing to prevent you doing that, but you would effectively start the process over again, so that you'd have to publish a proposal, invite consultations, and then bring it back if there were objections to it. So you are perfectly legally entitled to make a decision today because you have already consulted.
Can I just come back then on this? If we just ask a question, if we did go back to consultation and we started the process again, does that open then a can of worms that, and we never get to a decision then, because there'll be objections one way or the other, for and against, and so on and so forth. That's the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about. I think it's a very good proposal. It's a very good compromise, but I just want to make sure that we actually do things. I know we're doing things correctly, but actually being fair as well. Does that make sense? Fair and open, really.
Yeah. I think, as I said, you're perfectly entitled to make the decision today, because the people who've wanted to make representations have, and you've heard them in some detail from Ian. If you were to consult further, then effectively you're starting the process again, and so you'd end up with you would authorize Ian to go out to consult. He'd have to put another notice in the paper with an implementation date. That implementation date would stand, provided there were no objections. If there were any objections, it would have to come back to the committee, and you'd effectively be in the position you're in now, except you would have consulted on that proposal. So in short, you are entitled to make a decision today because you have consulted and you have taken into account the representations, but it's a matter for you. If you wanted to start the process again, you could, but you delay any implementation then probably until well into the autumn.
Gwyneth?
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in English because I'm aware that there's problems with the translation equipment. It's nice to see the gentleman here in the. Are we able to address the people who are in attendance?
Well, in effect, you are by taking part in the committee.
Ask questions, and can they answer?
That's a matter for the chair. It's at the chair's discretion.
Is it? Well, I have no objection.
The reason I'm asking is because my understanding of the industry is I'm not an expert in this industry at all. Now, most of the objections seem to come from the fact that the prices are going up, and the times where the different tariffs will be applied are different. But from my understanding of the way that these are applied, that's up to anybody to decide. They don't have to start tariff 2 at 6 o'clock. They can wait until 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock if they want to.
It's the maximum charge.
Yeah.
So if they can charge a lesser fee,
yeah,
or whatever. So
now,
yes, in effect.
is that the case? That can they? Is that something that they can apply to every job that they have, or do they have to decide? No, this is going to be my tariff, and always set that. Did you know what I mean? Does a particular company or a self-employed taxi driver, do they have to decide on a tariff? So they have to decide, we are going to adopt this new tariff, or they decide we're going to adopt a lower tariff and always apply that whichever job they have, or can they decide on a job by job basis? what tariff they apply.
I'm sure they have their figures, but all I can say is that that would be the maximum they could charge. I'm sure with different customers, they would charge
Different amounts.
less fee the amount of regular customer.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
I'm not able to answer for them.
thank you. No. It was I wanted an answer from a regulations point of view. So you've answered my question. So that would be what I'm interested in is given that, why, given the flexibility, why such a strong objection? I don't know if there's anybody here who can answer that, but if
Yes, well, I can add to it, because this is exactly what I thought. If it's just a maximum, why is there such objection to it? And I think there are instances where if drivers work for a company, the company may have a policy and the company may state a charge, but a driver could still charge up to the maximum because it's a legal maximum. And I think there was some concern that you could have the instance where a company's quoted one price and the drivers charge more, and then you get arguments. Okay. Now you could counter that with, surely if someone's employing a driver, they should figure out how to make sure they charge according to company policy. But that was the one point that I had that sort of countered this argument that, oh, it's just a maximum.
I haven't finished yet. I mean, I can't see how that would be any less relevant with a different tariff. It doesn't matter what tariff you have, if there is flexibility to it, and if this situation that you describe arises where the company quotes one thing, which I find a bit strange, and then the driver turns up and quotes something else because the original quote was less than the maximum allowed tariff. It's just, I don't know, that's just bad company management, and it will, doesn't matter what the tariff is, you'll always have a potential risk for that. Anyway, that was my first. I don't know if there's anybody here who can answer me and would like to.
Would you like to answer?
But then, if that driver charges more, the new tariff, to get it in there, then I'll get a phone call saying, you've advertised this driver is doing this. So it causes massive problems because of the flexibility of what you're giving us. Do you know what I mean? It's better for us having, the proposal there, if it's consulted on, I think we get more support than what is there at the moment. But we need a playing field where we say to the drivers, right, that is what you'll charge. It's all right trying to advertise less, but we're not in the cars with them drivers. You've got instances at the moment, we get reports from other companies. There's a 92-year-old lady who's charged £5.50 for a £3.20 fare. Not the company's fault. They're not in the car with the driver. It's very hard to police. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So we'd rather have a tariff we can work with, let's say work on the meter, or we go back to where we were 6-7 years ago, where people are doing £3 fares anywhere around Rill. It doesn't work.
A sort of unofficial Uber.
Yeah, well, no, it's not that. It's they're trying to take the customers, but then they haven't got the drivers to do it. We work out bringing around Rill. One side of Rill, we've got, I don't know how many hundreds of speed bumps. There's your tyres, your ball joints, the repairs from that. You can't do it on £3. But everyone at the moment is sticking to the rates and using the meters. But if we go too high, we will lose the customers. Or, tariff 2 on Sundays and from 6 o'clock Friday and Saturday. It doesn't work. We make a profit, and we do. Drivers, as long as they're run correctly, will make money. But we need something where the operator isn't getting in the neck, because she's having an argument every 10 minutes, she's going to leave the job.
So it needs this sort of regulation. Is that okay, Gwyneth?
You've explained it from your point of view, and I get that. I'm still not sure why an alternative flexible tariff, apart from the fact that you'd like it to be a bit lower. That's what I'm getting. But it would still, you know, as long as the tariff is flexible and can be applied however you like it, it's still going to have that potential for the problems that you're describing.
It is a massive problem.
Yeah. So basically, as I understand it, you'd prefer to have a fixed tariff that everybody had to apply.
That we can
Yeah.
work with.
Yeah.
And to be honest, that proposal, we'd have to look at it. I'm quite happy on what we've got at the moment. That gives us a little bit of an increase, which is fine, because average journeys, Morrison's to the rest, is a mile, £3. We might do 20, 30, 40 of them a day, you know, but then they go to Kimmel Bay. People in Kimmel Bay, which is Conway, are phoning us for taxis because we're on a lower rate. So it does make a difference. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, thanks for your help.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Hugh, you wanted to come
Oh,
in.
sorry, I have.
Oh, did you have another?
Yeah, I
Oh,
still
sorry.
haven't finished.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Gwyneth.
I was interested in the second letter of support, and there was a petition with that. How many names were there? Maybe was it?
There was 38 altogether. There was two support petitions.
Okay. I mean, that changes the balance in favor of this to against it quite significantly, doesn't it? So you know, I don't know how much weight we should give to that, but it's just something that I was interested in. I think from the other couple of points I've made is that with all due respect to Martin, I mean, the original proposal comes from officers, and I'm trusting that the officers have some methodology behind this, and you know, we're not really looking at inflationary pressures this year. You know, we're looking at a year-on-year inflation. So it's not 10%, is it? You know what I mean? It's the prices have increased since 2018, and the tariff hasn't. So I would imagine that the proposed new tariff would be trying to reflect that, not just the sort of inflation as it is at the moment, but
it does say within the report that there is room for flexibility.
Yeah.
Adjustments, if you like, to what's been proposed.
but it's
so
on such short notice to sort of consider a proposal by someone, you know, again, no disrespect intended here, but I don't know your expertise in this, and you know,
it's an adjustment rather than it's a compromise, and Ian has already had sight of it and says it's doable.
it's
So
of course it's doable, but whether Ian would actually recommend it is what I would like to hear from Ian, really, in this case.
Can I just get you, because he has been waiting, and you know, I'm going to try and pull it round to a conclusion soon.
Thank you. Firstly, I really was a bit concerned in the discussions there when we heard a bit about drivers charging different amounts to different customers depending on their vulnerability or whatever. I thought, in my naive way, that taxis had meters, and you see what the meter says, and that's what you pay the driver. And you may give them a tip if it's your view, but that's a personal matter. But to hear somebody, a vulnerable passenger, has been overcharged by £2 seems to me quite intolerable. And I mean, I know that's down to operators as to who they employ, but I had a real concern when I heard that, and I was surprised. Inflationary pressures tell us that we've got to take a common sense approach and allow an increase, because businesses have got to pay or businesses will disappear. So yes, so we've got a proposal in front of us from the officers, which has been worked through professionally and costed. Now we've got an amendment on the table, which I don't actually disagree with, but I'm with Gwyneth. I'm a bit concerned it hasn't had a professional work through by accountants in the Treasurer's Department or whatever, to make sure we're not going into the law of unintended consequences or you know, with it. So I would have preferred to have seen him. I'm not. I admire Martin for what he's done. I couldn't do that. I don't know whether Martin's an accountant. Maybe he is. I don't know him. I've just met him. But I would have preferred an independent view of whether those figures will work. That's the bit I'm saying. Thank you.
Andrea, you want to?
Thank you. Thanks. I was going to come in on that. Is there not a local or Denbighshire taxi services body or group or forum that these new figures could perhaps be suggested to, rather than going out to full consultation, just to get their initial ideas on that subject and avoid the whole consultation? Because at this stage right now, we don't know what people think of those figures. And I don't think we can just say yay or nay to them, because the people who they affect haven't been asked about them. Thank you.
Gentleman at the back there put his hand up to Andrea's question. Do you want to move nearer to a microphone, or can you hear? Can you project?
So good morning. My name is Amy Horvath. I'm working for Roberta's Taxis in Ruthin, so we're fairly local. I am the transport manager of the company. So first of all, I would like to address the new prices. I've given you this list of the changes of the costs of a vehicle. So that is for 50,000 miles, it's an extra £7,000, roughly, give or take a little bit. But when you charge the meter prices, then you charge per mile. But a taxi has to go out and it has to come back, so that mile becomes 2 miles. If you divide the £7,200 figure, which I given with 50,000, you come about 50 pence per mile extra figure, which in your case should be 30 pence a mile. And that is purely the running cost of the vehicle, nothing else. No salaries, no office, nothing. So it's, I believe 20p doesn't even cover our costs.
So are you happier with the proposal?
I'm happy to negotiate with it,
Yeah.
but that doesn't yet cover the cost we have. And you see from my point of view why. Because it's very, very misleading. The 1 mile is actually 2 miles.
Yes, but that was the same. That's the way it's always been.
Yeah, I understand. What I try to point out, if you see my calculation, the cost per mile, just purely on fuel, and bear in mind that was with a £1.85 diesel price. Now we on £2, which is an extra 50p again. And again, the initial, just put a 50p or £1 to a fare that works until the car doesn't burn more than half a liter of fuel. If the journey requires more than half a liter of fuel, that's a loss again, if we don't change the running or the live mile costs, if you see what I mean. Also, what you need to see, or I would like to tell how taxi industry works. As Les said, most of the journeys within town, about a mile or two, as soon as you go long distance, you get most times pre-quoted. And as the gentleman over there said, he wants to pay whatever is on the meter. For example, Real to Manchester Airport, what is it, 60 miles?
201 kilometers return, so 125 miles.
So 125 miles, that's on the current fare as well, not taking into the starting mile as an account, say £2 a mile. That's 125 quid. Not many people wants to pay that. And we don't even charge that. These meter prices generally apply for round town jobs and around town, yeah? As soon as you go a bit of a distance, I would say probably in our range, anything beyond more, that's about 12 miles. So say about 10 to 15 miles. Then people always ask for a quote up front and you quote them. And those quotes are very often below the meter because you can do a lot more miles within the same amount of time. And also what you need to see that this county, as we are working in Ruthin, very different than what Les does in Real. For example, I cover 2 miles a lot faster than they do because they have to go through on those speed bumps and everything. So I think there was, I'm sorry I left my paperwork over there, but there was one of the objections when one of the drivers mentioned go from Saint Asaph to Real, yeah? So say he picks up a passenger, go to the address, per picking up the passenger, by the time they come out, I would say 5 to 10 minutes, yeah? Go from Saint Asaph to Real in an ideal condition, about 14, 15 minutes, let's call it the return journey, half an hour plus the pickup time. That's about 35 to 40 minutes, yeah? He earns for this £15. Out of this, with the current fuel prices, the fuel is £3. So he has £12 left, yeah, for about 40 minutes of work. So let's say he can do 2 of these, and we didn't see that that driver may be sitting on a rank waiting for a job, doing absolutely nothing, because we have to calculate those times as well, the office work, which goes behind it, which is stated in our letter, that we have plenty of those. I bet Les got plenty of administration in his office because I bet got 2-3 office stuff as well. And I bet he works a lot in the office too, which has to come out from these fares. So going back to my start, so that driver goes to Real, let's say that he got 2 of these jobs on the roll with absolutely no waiting time. That's an hour and 20 minutes, yeah? So that brings him a profit of £12, £18 for an hour and 20 minutes work. So that's what, about 15 quid an hour. He has to pay probably £3 out of that if he's not VAT registered, because we are, so we immediately lost 20% there. And then he has to pay about 30% for his PAYE and for his national insurance. So what he has left? And we didn't count any running cost, any insurance, any maintenance, accidental damage, nothing of these in it. He is earning, I don't know, well, £6-7 an hour.
Okay, that's your contribution, and it's given us a better understanding of what you have to cope with. So what does everybody think about moving forward?
Can I just ask you a question? Can we be told in simple terms what the officer's proposal is? Is it 10, 15, 20%? And what is the amendment? In other words, is one 10% and one 5%? And then at least you can get, I'm starting to have concerns that we're going down a road here that hasn't been properly researched.
So there is a worry. It's 10%, Martin said. What's our?
Just a point to clarify. The proposal is based from drivers. There's the proposal that drivers or licensed drivers are put forward, so it's not from officers directly.
Yeah, the proposal that officers have brought to the table.
Yes, yeah, sorry, but I didn't go in directly ask whether it was, but it's from a driver and drivers' proposals way back in earlier this year for that. There's no actual group, Denbighshire group, that's represented. I think there are an awful lot of drivers that are self-employed, so there's no consistent union or anything like that from them, and multiple companies and things like that. So there's no specific one group that we could address this with. And some points of clarity, I think, really on that is that this is a rate for Hackney carriage vehicles that are running from ranks or applying for hire. Any private hire work that they do, they are allowed to do that, but they just cannot charge more than what the tariff is. So that's why it's important for them, because
Unless it's used for only private hire.
unless it's if it's only a private hire vehicle, this is nothing to do with them. So for those private hire only vehicles, that's it. Yeah. So the quotes of 120 miles, I think it was 120 miles, may well be a charge of under the tariff £200. They don't, they don't charge that, whatever it might be. Yeah.
So going back to the original point that was made by the committee member, the 10% compromise that Martin has come up with, what percentage is ours? Is ours around about 9?
Hang
Well, I'm asking Ian. I'm asking Ian.
Yeah, without looking at a table, I don't think I can answer. I think generally it was rising from 7%, then it went to 11, and then up to 16, I think it was from there. So the further the journey, the higher the percentage rate increase.
Could I add to that, please?
Yeah.
So it's actually, it's 7% if it's 2 miles. At 15 miles, it's 22%. But if you look at the fare per mile is going up 25%. If you take into account inflation, if you just inflated those fares, according to the 2.5% in 2018, 1.8% inflation in 2019, 0.9, 2.6, and 9 for 2022. If you add that as inflation, you would get a £3.50 start fare and £2.50.
Can you not go into too much?
Okay, all right, okay. So if I summarise, the pros one that the drivers have brought forward is more than inflation, okay, and the compromise that I put in is also, well, it's more than inflation for the start fare, but not for the fare per mile.
So would you like to have the final word, Ian?
So the proposal they put forward of the start fare at the moment would be a reduction in the rate of our mileage, but then it would be an increase of per miles. But I just wonder whether that would be more appropriate to be charged at the point, the 1/10 of a mile all the way through. So it actually pays for the work that they're doing from there. I think the tariff 2 desperately needs to be reconsidered. I think that to implement those at this time, because I think if you're doing a journey now at 6 p.m. And then the tariff 2 comes in next time, you're almost doubling, trebling your rate to start with from there. So that would be contentious for the customers, I think. So I think the proposal that Martin's put forward does I think it's £6.20 then for the 2 mile benchmark that we use, which is an increase on what we put forward is £6, I think ours was. So it's already been explained that they don't think that's going to cover that cost that's there, but maybe it should be something that we look at and work with them to come to a better and
in a very within 6 months to see how things are going. So shall I put forward 2 proposals or?
Just technically, once the debate is finished, when you've decided the debate is finished,
Yeah.
you actually have a proposal which has been seconded in terms of an amendment. So under the rules of procedure, that is the thing that you need to decide first. So when you get to a vote, what you would be asked to do would be to vote whether or not you supported amending the proposal to what Councillor Martin Hogg put forward, and which was seconded by Councillor Butterfield. If you vote in favour of that, you are just voting in favour of that being the substantive motion, and it would then be available for anyone else to amend that should they wish to do so. Or if they didn't, then you would go to the vote on that as the substantive motion. So effectively, because it's been moved and seconded, that's the first vote you need to take. And it's not to say that you agree with it, it's just you agree with whether that should be the resolution that you vote upon thereafter, because that can be subsequently amended by anybody else who wants to move an amendment, if that's clear.
Ian, are you saying that from did you want to come in? Sorry, I thought you were just looking at you.
I'll speak in English as well, because I understand that
It's not so
just
good
for
today.
this meeting. Yeah, I've listened very carefully to all the points that have been raised, and I think it's a very difficult resolution, really, because we do need to keep in mind that the firms do have these increased costs, and we do need to support you to be able to move towards renewable and using energy cars that will go towards our climate emergency as well. So in order to be able to do that, the firms need to have the revenue in to be able to do that. So I think that's maybe a factor that we need to keep in mind. I personally, I would feel that maybe the tariffs that have been agreed, offered to us from the officer, that have come from the service really seem, although on paper seem maybe, that they do look as if they're quite high in terms of a change. But with that being the highest number that you could charge, and that what we've heard that generally on the longer journeys they are lower. What I would propose is possibly that we look at that rather than it being a full mile on the second mile forward. That seems to me a big jump to charge someone who's doing 2.1 miles, 3 miles. That would be difficult for the consumers to maybe to understand. That we would look at maybe 1/10 of a mile, and that we don't change on the tariff 2 times at this point, but we look at that for the next review, which is an early review, is what I would feel more comfortable with.
So you're more or less approving the tariff that's detailed before us today.
I would say so, with some amendments to that,
With some small amendments.
with smaller amendments to that, and that we then review the effect that that's had on the service, that the effect that that's had, and that we look at the amount of, because we do need to keep in mind that this is the upper limit that they can charge.
Yeah.
Firms are open to be able to charge less than that if that's
they
what
want
works
to.
for them
Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of competition.
Yeah.
Isn't it really?
Good. Right. Has anybody got anything else they want to add to the
Just for
discussion?
clarity on that, my understanding, and you're saying that we keep the start charge of £3.50, the miles per the mileage, the subsequent mileage £2.50, as highlighted there, but change to a 0.1 per mile rather than the full mile.
Rather than putting full miles, which I think is what would have the biggest impact on a consumer, is that you're paying for 3 miles when you're traveling 2.1. That seems to me a little unfair on the consumer. And that if we change that to a part mile, then that would come some way to make a compromise within that. And that we then review this really carefully within a shorter timescale to review it.
Within 6 months.
And that we don't change for the tariff to change the times that have been proposed for the Friday, Saturday. I think that once again is a big jump to change to 6 p.m. And that also have a knock-on effect on hospitality, because that people wouldn't visit those types of hospitality because of the jump in the fares. Is that I'm making myself clear, hopefully.
I think then there are 2 proposals. Then there's that one, and then yeah.
You have to deal with them one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So currently what you have is you have a proposal from Councillor Hogg, and I'll read my note of it just to make sure I'm not misrepresenting it, which is that the Tariff 1 starts at start fare of £4 and £2.20 per mile thereafter. Tariff 2, £5.50 start fare with £3.30 per mile thereafter, and that the fare would be charged in 1/10 of a mile increments, and that there be no change to the tariff 2 times. I think that's the proposal. And that the start fare includes 1 mile. And that the start fare includes 1 mile. Yeah. So that's the proposal that Councillor Hogg made and was seconded by Councillor Butterfield. That's an amendment, so it's not the final vote. What you would need to do would be to indicate whether or not you were happy for that amendment to be put forward, and then you may have subsequent amendments after that. But you first of all need to decide whether you prefer that amendment to the original proposal. So that's the position you're in.
Can we have your vote on the amendment that Gary has just read out? How many are in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 4 in favour. Against? 4.
Chair.
So I think I will go with the second. Yeah.
So for or against the amendment?
Against.
Against the amendment. Okay. therefore you're back in the position where the proposal that you have in front of you is the proposal that's contained within the report. Understand there may be a further amendment proposed, but the amendment moved by Councillor Hogg has been defeated. Therefore, you're back in the position where you've got the original proposal. But given some of the contributions to the debate, I'm anticipating that there'll be a further amendment proposed. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah. So it's the proposed tariff as in Appendix D with a slight amendment, which either you or Ian.
I think we just need to be, it probably would be good if the councillor could just set out what they're proposing as an amendment, just for clarity for everybody who's viewing the meeting.
Clarity, it's a slight amendment, isn't it?
Try and word this clearly. I would propose that we take the tariff as we've been set out to us, with the amendments that rather than that we have a 1/10 of a mile, that it's increments rather than a full mile for the second mile onwards, and that there would be no changes for the times and dates for the tariff 2. I think that's clear.
So the proposed amendment is that the tariff would be as set out in the proposals, subject to the additional miles being counted in 1/10 of a mile increment, and that there be no changes to the times in tariff 2. So you just need a seconder for that.
Is there any journey time included in that set fare in your proposal? Does it include any journey distance in your proposal? So the start fare is just as you get in, and then the clock starts ticking, is it?
The proposal, I think that it includes the first mile, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the first mile is as it's set in the tariff, isn't it, in the proposal that we've been given?
Yeah, just for
Yeah, so
clarity,
that- but I'm not changing that.
the start is for the first mile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Have we got a seconder? Good. So can we vote on that then, on this?
And again, just for clarity, that's an amendment,
That's
so
an
it's not the final
amendment.
vote. So
Not
you're
the final
voting,
vote.
you're voting to determine whether or not you wish to amend the proposal as set out by Councillor Jones. And then if that amendment is carried, you then need to consider whether anybody had any further
So-
amendment to make, or whether you then went to a vote on that as being a substantive proposal.
So this is the proposed tariff as detailed with the small amendments made by Della. Would you like to vote on that? No. So I've got 1, 2.
Sorry, I think for clarity, Chair, I think somebody asked if they could make a comment, and I think we formally asked for a vote. So it's up to you. If you want to go straight to the vote, we just need to
Straight to the
formally.
vote.
Okay, then you need to ask for all those in favour.
All those in favour? Right. So that's the amendment. Now, where do we have to go from there?
Okay, sorry, as the
Substantive, I do believe.
as the procedural pedant in the corner, you now have an amended motion, which is the amendment that was moved by Councillor Jones, which is the proposal as set out in the notice that was published, subject to it being additional miles counted in 1/10 mile increments, and there being no changes to the tariff 2 times and dates. So that's the proposal that you have in front of you. It's a matter for you, Chair, whether you want further debate in that, whether anybody wants to move any further amendment to that. And if not, then you can move to the vote on that as a
Right.
substantive motion.
So you've heard the amendment to the tariff as detailed on Appendix D. Are you happy to vote on that, or do you want to make any other comment? Andrea?
Thank you. I'm getting a little bit lost in the process here, Gary, sorry. This next part of the process, does that then leave us back at the 3 choices, whether to accept, amend or reject? Because the reject hasn't been on the table yet.
No, you're in the position where the accepting the original proposal has gone, because that's been amended now. So you're being asked to consider whether or not you wish to amend the proposal and approve. Well, you've said you want to amend the proposal, whether you want to approve that the new tariff charges would be as per the amendment. And so just for clarity, that would be as set out in the proposal, subject to 1/10 mile increments and no changes to the tariff 2 times.
So it's
So
slightly amended,
that's
the second option.
yeah, that's the issue that's in front of you now. It is possible for any member to move an amendment to that. So when you said about rejecting the proposals, you could move an amendment to defer the matter or to ask for it to have further consideration or consultation to bring back. That's an amendment it would be open to any member to make. But the position you're in at the moment is you have a substantive motion, which is that set out in the amendment moved by Councillor Jones. But you can seek to amend that if you want to.
Could I just add that caveat to that is that we also add on to that a review, an early review to it, because that's really important, I think. I think that's really important.
We're best to vote, I think, before comments.
Sorry, Chair, can I just make one point of clarification before you do a vote on that? I've just been looking at the tariff as I've been sitting there listening to it. I've noted that there's a surcharge included in the proposed tariff on that, but I've omitted to put the charge for the surcharge on there. So on the tariff sheet that you've got for Appendix 9, Appendix D, you'll see at the bottom there's a surcharge for more than 4 passengers, four passengers or more.
Yeah.
You'll notice there that there isn't a charge for that. So that should probably be reading at 20 pence. So what I'm saying is that you've considered the tariff, and with the modifications of the 10th per mile, and also the not moving the tariff.
Can we have quiet at the back, please? Can we have quiet?
So what I'm saying is that you should either consider that to be in the tariff or outside the tariff as well while you're making the modifications. Sorry, you've only considered at the moment the tariff start charge, mileage charge, tariff 2 charge, but not the surcharge for the passengers at the foot of that. But that's a new proposal. That was a proposal of the tariff. So if you're happy to that as it is, I'm just trying to confirm that it should be 20 pence. There.
Okay. So was that an omission?
It was sorry,
Okay.
apologies, an omission that it didn't go into theirs.
Right.
It should be that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it includes that. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Technically, the proposal doesn't include it, so if we
So
pass
it's
it
got
as
to
it
come
is,
in as an
Yeah,
amendment.
the
That's been left
modification.
out.
So it's a technical amendment.
Yeah, the
rather
modification
than
would be,
yeah.
it should say 20 pence.
Yeah.
It
It's
is
not on,
in the supporting document.
Not
it's
on
not
the
on that
not on
one.
Appendix D.
Yeah,
No. No. Okay.
I'm sure.
So are we ready? Do I take a question before the vote?
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
Okay, Joan.
I'm beginning to feel quite uncomfortable about this, how this has been brought to the table this morning. I was quite happy to look at an amendment that had been passed to the officer and debated with the officer for his input into the amendment that might be made this morning and was and failed. But then on top of that, we can put as many amendments as we forward. But I feel, and obviously I'm going to vote for the substantive motion this morning because, of course, it's eminently sensible that we do that. But I do feel that different things have been put onto the table for amendments that were very minor, but could have a huge consequence in the future. So I just want to flag up, Chair, that I feel quite uncomfortable. This first time I've ever felt uncomfortable in a licensing meeting that I feel has been done on the hoof rather than with consultation that has always happened in the past. I feel a little uncomfortable about it.
I support that, Chair. Just a term when I spoke, I'm worried here about the law of unintended consequences. And I don't think anybody should be dropping facts, figures, projections on any meeting. I don't just mean here today or at any time on the hoof. And I'm sure Councillor Hogg has done a huge amount of job. Absolute admiration of him for what I see beside me here. But I think that should have gone for a report to be laid out beside the report we were considering and not dropped on us on the hoof. But that's something to learn for the future. We're where we are now, but I think we'll vote on.
Do you think that the compromise that Martin was trying to reach was fairly put together, and it was no, but you know, I think it was considered fairly and given great consideration by the committee. So, and anybody in any meeting can put forward you know, an amendment or a compromise. That's entitled, everybody's entitled to do that, whatever the meeting may be. So whether or not you think it's been inappropriately handled, I don't know. Yeah.
No, what I would say to you from a procedural point of view is this. The committee previously approved a proposal to be published. That proposal was published. The law requires that people have the opportunity to make representations, and you've heard representations read out by Ian, both in favour and against the proposal. You've also heard from members of the industry this morning for and against different aspects of the proposal. And the proposal that's currently before you is substantially the proposal that has been put forward by officers, subject to some minor amendment around the tariff 2 times and the incremental charge. So I don't think it's right to say that what's in front of you at the moment has been done on the hoof. It's been done in accordance with a statutory process of consultation. The amendment that was moved by Councillor Hogg was defeated. So what you have in front of you is this effectively the proposal that was consulted upon, subject to a change in the times and the 1/10 mile increment. So I would be comfortable for you to make a decision on the basis of the information that you've had in front of you, but it is entirely a matter for you. As I said to Councillor James earlier on, if members were uncomfortable, then they can either defer this decision, or they could ask that the proposal that's being put forward be subject to further consultation. That's entirely up to you. What I'm saying is that from a legal point of view, it's perfectly in order for you to make the decision on the basis of what I've just said. But if you're not happy to make that decision and you feel that you need to do some other step, that's entirely a matter for you.
I do feel uncomfortable about it. I did also say that we would be eminently sensible to vote for the proposal. I just feel a little uncomfortable, and I had to say that, Chair.
I understand that, Joan. Martin, I'm going to say no to any more questions, and we'll go to the amended proposed tariff as outlined in Appendix D. Do you want it read out again, or are you happy to go ahead with that?
I'm feeling a little bit. Can we not defer this for further consultation? There's clearly some work being done around, and could that be shared with officers? And it may well be that we will have to go out, I suppose, to start the process again. But you know, I don't know. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
As I said before, you're perfectly entitled to do that. But if you don't make a decision today on a proposal, then you will miss the statutory time period within which to make a change, and you'd have to start again. Now you can do that, there's nothing to prevent you doing that, but the consequence of that would be that the fares would stay as they are until such time as you'd been through that further process. So that's it is a matter entirely for members. If members are more comfortable doing that, they can, but the process would have to be recommenced.
Yeah. So I am going to go back and say we're going to vote on this amendment or the substantial, the amended resolution. So we'll go ahead with that. And if you want it read out again, then.
Can I say one thing? Please. One final thing, and then I'll. I think what this process has shown is we don't have the information in front of us to make an informed decision on this. Okay, what we have is some data and lots of opinion. Okay, and as a council, I'm also used to be an engineer, so I've put my engineer head into this, and I haven't done some specialist study into what's going on here. I've used principles of percentages, right? It's fairly straightforward stuff to look at what this proposal means from a numbers point of view. Okay, and the proposal we are about to vote on is actually a decrease, right? And I'm not sure whether the council is aware of that, but for a 1 mile journey, it's a 3% decrease. Okay, so I'd proposed a sort of 10% across the board compromise because yes, I know, and I don't want to reinstate that. All I want to make clear is we don't have the information, but we need to do something because these guys need an increase. Okay, but this is where we are, and this is why I had a problem with this process in the first place, because we did not have the necessary information to make this decision properly. So I suggest that we follow on with this process, we vote on this amendment, and in future, we perhaps need a working group to have a proper process for assessing how taxi fares are set and how they increase in line with inflation, the effect it has on pubs and restaurants, the effect it has on elderly customers, etc., etc. Okay.
So can we please vote on this substantive motion, which has been duly amended, and can we agree that this is the way forward? Yeah.
My understanding of the substantive motion is that it would be to approve the tariff changes set out in the proposal contained in the report, subject to the increment being 1/10 of a mile for additional mileage, and that there be no change to the tariff times from previous tariff times, and that there be a surcharge per passenger for journeys more than 4 passengers of 20p. And I think it's fair to say that members have expressed in no uncertain terms that they would like to see this reviewed early within a 6-month process and a report brought back for further consideration, given the volatility of prices and concern about what the impact of any increase would be. Is that a fair summation of
Yes, that's a fair summation. So can we vote on that, please, members? In favour. So we've got.
Yeah, for the benefit of anybody who is viewing the webcast and didn't see that on camera, that was a unanimous vote in favour of that substantive motion.
Good. Okay, I don't know whether you. What's the time? Would you like a break? 10-minute break on the work of the licensing section. And Ian, would you like to give the report?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is just an information report to update members of the work of our licensing officers. And it goes back on the work that we did in 21-22. For new members, this is an annual report that I do as an update just after the financial year to the next available committee. So it does look back quite a lot, but it just gives you some indication of the work that goes on from there. So there's no decision that's required, and it's just for information. So alcohol and entertainment. Currently, we've got 496 licensed premises, 101 on sales, 132 off sales, and 208 with both on and off, and 193 late night refreshment establishments, takeaways generally, 36 of which are solely serving late night refreshments. Personal license holders are 1,325 amongst our midst. During the year, there were 37 complaints from the public in relation to licensed premises, and the vast majority of those linked to noise and antisocial behaviour and occasional underage sales. These have been dealt with in collaboration with our other services and appropriate action and advice given as and when necessary. During the year, we've had 19 applications for 19 new premises, 25 transfers of license, 19 variations of conditions on license details, 66 variations of designated premises supervisor, DPS, you'll get to know of all about those eventually, 136 temporary event notices, 10s for all of us, and 42 new personal licenses and 20 changes to personal license details to address mainly. Licensing officers continue to work alongside our partners in North Wales Police, Immigration and other Denbighshire teams, health and safety, food safety training standards to conduct joint visits where necessary. Notably, one such joint work stream involved compliance with the minimum unit pricing requirements, and 100 premises visited and only 5% were not compliant at the time, but are all being rectified satisfactorily. That came specifically from a piece of work for the Welsh Government. They asked us to attend all those. Licensing officers continue to meet regularly, usually once a week, with North Wales Police colleagues, where we try to identify and deal with any emerging issues following the principles laid out in the Statement of Licensing Policy. Again, one of the policy documents that you'll get to see. So our Hackney and private hire licensing, our taxi trade. Currently, we've got 224 Hackney carriage vehicles, and 20 of those are wheelchair accessible vehicles, WAVs as we go. 47 private hire vehicles, and they won't be interested in the last 2 hours of debate because it doesn't apply to their work. And 11 of those 47 private hire vehicles are wheelchair accessible. We've got 16 private hire operators, 22 private hire drivers, and 287 dual drivers, which means they can drive either a Hackney carriage or a private hire vehicle. There have been 46 taxi-related complaints on matters including abusive taxi rank, unlicensed vehicle, illegal parking, applying for hire, overcharging or careless driving. Appropriate action has been taken in all those at officer level. During the year, there have been 36 new applicants for a licence to drive private hire vehicles. 3 applications were withdrawn at the applicant's request, and 2 applications have been refused. In relation to the renewal applications, 2 drivers were refused on application, one of which had their appeal rejected at Magistrates Court. And additionally, during the year, 1 driver had the licence revoked and is subject to an ongoing appeal. Outside the usual compliance testing of vehicle, ad hoc checks were conducted on 46 vehicles at a variety of locations, being schools, taxi ranks and roadside. Of those, almost half, 41% are defects, although the overwhelming number are related to minor non-safety elements. And those are things like your first aid kit is out of date or something like that. Officers had reason to issue written warnings to 13 drivers during the course of the year, all in respect of undeclared driving endorsements. Other work, so gambling and gaming and lotteries. We've got significant work of ensuring the accuracy of databases, and we've established that we've got 5 adult gaming centres, 3 family entertainment centres, 3 bingo premises, 12 betting shops, 1 club gaming permit, 8 club machine permits, 8 unlicensed family entertainment centre gaming permits, 9 licensed premises permits, 85 registered lotteries. Gambling is quite a big subject to go through. You know. There have not been any complaints in respect to licensed gambling premises. Street trading. There was only 1 application for a street trading permit, and this was subsequently withdrawn by the applicant. 4 complaints have been lodged concerning street trading practices, all of which have been resolved. And members are advised that the current practice for any new applicants will remain until such time as a policy has been determined and approved through this committee. Therefore remains that this will be drafted and presented by officers in due course. So it'll be on your forward work program at some point. Charity collections. So this is the house to house 17 permits and street collections amount to 10 permits. One complaint was received in respect of regulated charity street collections, which resulted in no further action. Scrap metal. There have been no applications for scrap metal sites or collectors this year, but please note that they're on a 3-year cycle, so there may be a few in years to come. There have been 3 complaints in respect of scrap metal issues, all concerning potential unlicensed activity and ongoing. Service requests and freedom of information. So 314 service requests across all the range of functions, and that's usually for information advice, and that's been given and duly accepted, and 20 freedom of information requests, again across all the whole range, and appropriate response is given. Last year and the year before, COVID related work, we were heavily involved in the pandemic restrictions, and they were constantly changing. We've been helping business ensure they comply and are able to operate, continued, provide advice and guidance as the country moves out of the pandemic. During this year, we responded to almost 100 COVID-related matters, which was significantly down on the years before that. I think we were up into the few hundreds before then. Overall workload results. During the year, we've had 75 inspections, primarily around vehicles and licensed premises, and over 5,000 interactions with licensing officers, including those linked to inspections, complaints, as well as other interaction with business, telephone calls, letters, notices, emails, and the such like. General communications, frequent and direct, primarily through email with licensees. Licensing officers continue to publish a periodic newsletter to the taxi industry locally, and social media accounts have seen a number of proactive messages being posted throughout the year. Policies, a number of policies and reviews have been started during the year, most notably those related to taxis, as well as street trading and the statement of licensing policy. Officers have drafted a revised forward work plan and continue to update members on that at each committee hearing. Fees. At the time of writing, fees and charges for administration of the taxi regime have not changed, although a review will take place during this year. Complaints against the service. There's been one formal complaint against the service in this reporting period. The matter is concerned decision-making process for taxi licensing, and appropriate response is provided. Future work. As has been the case for a number of years, Welsh Government are reviewing the way taxi licence regime is regulated and administered. Significant work has already taken place to bring the Council's policy in line with Welsh Government thinking, and this policy work will continue throughout the year. Members will be aware of the Council's and Welsh Government's aim to have zero emissions. It's anticipated that licensing could play a part in that vision through its process for taxi licensing. Members and officers may wish to begin to identify what incentives could encourage licensees to locally to enable them to their aim to be met. Officers are exploring further opportunities to enable more efficient process for the applicants for the variety of licenses issues. This includes further development of database to allow online applications and public registers, and the potential to introduce electronic knowledge tests for new taxi driver applicants. And officers are arranging a training event for committee members towards the end of the year, and additionally, to support continued member development, officers can accommodate any requests from any committee member interested in shadowing officers on their duties. So the recommendation is to note the activity report for this year and comment on the contents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian, for the reports. And any comments from anybody? Hugh.
Well, yes, just excellent report.
thank you very much, Ian. I know how much work from my own experience with you goes into the work of the licensing team. And when you read this, 2 licensing officers, am I right in saying?
2 enforcement officers.
Two
Then
enforcement
we've got
officers.
a senior licensed officer, which is Nicky.
Yeah.
Then we have
Yeah, but actually in the field,
2 licensing officers.
yeah, Julia, you've got a lot of work to do here, you know, and I just think you've got to be congratulated on your efforts. But I know I haven't worked with the gentleman, but I've worked with the others, and I've been out in the field with you the last 5 years. One point I just quickly want to make, I know we've still got a lot of business to do. 3 complaints in respect of scrap metal issues containing potential unlicensed activity. Is that criminal activity? Because we've got this problem, haven't we, of lead being stripped off churches and taken to less scrupulous scrap dealers.
Well, not having a license is a criminal offence anyway. So in effect, yeah, but it's actually just not having the collecting scrap. We're not licensed, or having an unlicensed site. So generally, that's the issue. Not actually stealing lead, and of course, that's a police matter, not our matter.
But I suppose the corollary is, if they're unlicensed, there's other things they're below the radar on as well, possibly.
Who am I to say?
Okay, thank you, Joan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My question is about the costs on freedom of information. When we have a request of freedom of information, do we charge for that information being given?
Not able to.
Really? We charge in town council, I'm sure.
But as far as I'm aware, we're not able to charge for freedom of information.
That's
I can assist, Chair, if that helps.
Yes.
The freedom of information legislation provides that for the vast majority of requests, we're not able to make a charge. There are provisions for a charge to be made if, off the top of my head, responding to the request was going to entail more than 18 hours of an officer's time, then we can charge at £25 an hour for that. So if there were bulky requests for information, we can go back to the requester and offer them that we can deal with it on that charging basis, or we can ask them to refine their request. And there is a duty on us under the Act to advise and assist. So if a requester makes a request, we might say to them, well, look, we can't deal with that because we are entitled over that. If they don't pay, we're entitled to refuse the request. So we are obliged to say, well, do you want to refine it so that you can bring it down, make it easier for us to respond to? Because sometimes people ask for very wide-ranging information when they only actually want one particular bit of it. And so it's our obligation to try and assist them to do that.
Okay, Alan.
Thanks very much. I've just got one item. Underage sales, presumably this is to do with cigarettes and alcohol. Where are we up to with this? We do get quite a lot of complaints, don't we? I presume we follow up. Do we prosecute generally? Do we shut shops, businesses down? How do we deal with that?
We proportionally, I think we reacted, and this is specifically in relation to alcohol, because the report covers that. Yeah, it's proportionate. We would work on an intelligence that we've got. Any intelligence that comes through, we react to, or we assess and we react to, and we build our work from there. So I think any report that we do get, we do follow up on. And react in the according manner. So that usually would be a test purchase, tested through that way, and then normally first one would be a advice or a warning, and then build from that. I think there are actions that we can take for repeat premises that repeatedly sell to underage people. So there are actions that we get. And that would be in addition to prosecution as well. Prosecution would be the ultimate then.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
The question that I want to ask about the sales and the prosecution of course, Alan and I have quite a lot of complaints being the ward members for the town centre in Frill. And recently we've been involved in a particular trader in the town that has been making complaint about flyers going out for underpriced tobacco and cigarette sales. She has reported it on more than one occasion. And indeed, I've had a couple of emails this week as well, and I'm sure Alan has. How vigorous do we pursue this? Apparently, this is an ongoing thing that they keep prosecute, as far as I know, bringing a prosecution, but then there never seems to be any resolve. And the week after, they're reselling the tobacco in the same shops under the same circumstances. How vigorous are the police prosecutions on this, Ian? And how involved are we bringing that prosecution about?
Generally, it's not a matter for the licensing committee, this one, because it's in relation to tobacco.
I see.
But in answer to that, we would always follow up with the information. We take the appropriate action. It's difficult to say, what action we would take, but we use all the tools available to us. Unfortunately, sometimes prosecution might be the only tool to us, and the court or the prosecution process is not a quick fix. Getting to a magistrate's court might take months. We generally, if we've got the power to close a premises, then we would do it if it was available to us. It isn't always available to us. In alcohol sales, slightly different. There are some powers that are there, but in this matter you're talking about, in relation to tobacco, there isn't that. But we do use and we do follow up, like we do with alcohol underage sales. We follow up on all of them. We take them all seriously, and we encourage people to report any underage sales to us, so we know where we should be reacting, because it is based on intelligence. If we don't know it's happening, then we can't do anything about it.
This was brought up. The purchasers going in, the underage purchasers going in and being found. I've got the emails in front of me now, and I think you were, so I will resend them to you, because apparently you were in the circle of officers sent this. So I will resend it to you, Ian. Thank you, Chair, for that. But it is concerning when things like this go on and we don't appreciate, or the residents or the shop owners don't appreciate what is a licensing issue and what falls outside that remit. But thank you for that, Ian. It is helpful.
Okay, thank you, Ian. And if there's nothing else, we'll move on to, I think it's Nikki going to do, who's going to give us an update on the agreed work programme.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to advise members of the priorities of the licensing section, together with an update of the agreed work programme for the coming year up to 2022. The priorities of the licensing section reflect the duties placed on the authority in relation to its responsibilities in relation to its licensing function. Previous committee members may recall that at the last meeting in March, officers presented an updated work programme which was approved. Officers were scheduled to present a number of updated matters for your considerations to this meeting. However, due to a number of factors, such matters will be presented to a future meeting. A revised forward work programme is attached to Appendix A. I have taken this opportunity to provide members with an update on matters that should have been brought to this meeting. I'll work through those for you. So a review of the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Statement of Licensing Policy. We are progressing well with developing a draft statement of licensing policy for the taxi trade, following the recommendations by the Department of Transport to implement the statutory standards, which is supported by Welsh Government. We've recently produced a policy template for Welsh authorities to use. Officers have undertaken an interim consultation exercise with members of the taxi trade to gauge their opinions on those working within the trade. However, work is ongoing to finalise the policy document, which will go out to all the trade and the wider public, as agreed by members at their meeting last year. The review of the Statement of Principles for the Gambling Act 2005. A review of the Gambling Act Statement of Principles is taking place collectively with the 6 North Wales licensing authorities. And once the review has been completed, officers will be in a position to produce the proposed review to members. Review of the street trading policy. The licensing committee held in June last year, members approved a draft review of the street trading policy. They further agreed to support the establishment of a subgroup made up of representations for each member area groups, the purpose of which is to work with officers to further develop the policy prior to submitting a final version for approval and subsequent consultation. Prior to the recent elections, the subgroup met twice, and it was agreed that there are still major issues such as markets and prohibited streets that require further consideration, which can then be resurrected now that there's a new council term. The Statement of Licensing Policy for the Licensing Act 2003. At the meeting last September, members authorised officers to consult on a revised statement of policy. Since that meeting, officers have been working on ensuring the revised version of the policy meets the accessibility requirements prior to publishing the consultation. The document is now ready, and officers are working on with the council's public engagement officer to ensure that the statutory consultation requirements are met. And then following consultation, a report will be placed before full council to consider adopting the revised policy. So it's therefore recommended that members note the contents of the report, and it's further recommended that members consider and approve the forward work programme at Appendix A. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Any comments on the forward work programme? Good. Excellent. Thank you, Nikki. Oh, yeah, okay. Does that include them? So can we resolve, excuse me, to go into part 2 formally? Okay, thank you. I don't think there's nobody here, is there, to leave?